You can feel it before anybody says it out loud. It is 6:45 in the morning. The coffee is brewing. The house is quiet for a few more minutes. The children are still asleep. You open your phone, check the bank balance, check the calendar, check the mortgage, check the card payment, check what is due next week, and you do the arithmetic in your head one more time. What strikes you is not that you are broke. You are not broke. You make more money now than you made at 28. In many cases, you make more than your father made at your age. On paper, you look like the man who figured it out. You have the title, you have the house, you have the car, you have the family responsibilities society told you a serious man should carry. And yet, every month, some part of you asks the same ugly question. If I am making this much money, why do I still feel like I cannot breathe? I want to tell you something that most men in this decade of life need to hear, and very few hear in time. Between 35 and 45, the financial traps that ruin men do not look like recklessness. They look like progress. They look like maturity. They look like the rewards of finally becoming somebody. That is why they are so dangerous. When a man gambles away his paycheck, everybody can see the problem. When a man buys things he obviously cannot afford, everybody can point to the mistake. But the traps that catch the hardworking man in his late 30s and early 40s are different. He is not doing anything that sounds insane. He is doing exactly what the world applauds. He buys the house in the better school district because he wants his children to have a real shot. He finances the safer car because he has a family in the back seat. Now he takes on the harder role at work because that is what providers do. He pays for camps and travel teams and tutoring and all the other little signs that a good father is trying. None of that looks foolish. That is the problem. When the cage looks like responsibility, men stop questioning the bars. I have spent a lifetime watching capital compound businesses scale, managers deceive themselves, and investors confuse motion with progress. The same pattern shows up in ordinary household finance over and over again. Men do not usually get trapped because they lack discipline. They get trapped because they mistake expansion for strength. They increase obligations before they have built real stability. They buy comfort when they should be buying flexibility. They assume that a bigger income automatically means they are safer. Very often it means they have simply built a bigger machine that requires more fuel every month. That machine is what breaks them. The first trap is upgrading your lifestyle before you have built a real margin of safety. I am not talking about yachts and absurd vanity purchases. Those are easy to mock and easy to avoid. I am talking about very normal upgrades that arrive a little too early and cost a little more than they seem to. A raise comes in, you cross a line that used to feel mythical. Maybe it is 6 figures. Maybe it is just enough to make you feel that the years of pressure finally paid off. And because it feels as if you have arrived, you begin to live as if the arrival is permanent. The house gets bigger, the neighborhood gets nicer, the weekends get more expensive, the dinners out become standard instead of occasional. The line between a treat and a habit disappears. People call this lifestyle creep, as if it were just a matter of spending a bit more on coffee and restaurants. That description is far too gentle. The true danger is not that spending goes up. The true danger is that fixed costs rise and stay there. A larger house is never just a larger house. It is a larger mortgage, it is higher property taxes, it is higher insurance, it is higher maintenance, it is higher utilities, it is more furniture to fill the space. It is a permanently higher amount you must earn before you have saved or invested a single dollar. That is the number I want you to respect, your break. Even point the amount required every month just to keep the structure standing. Once that number rises, your freedom falls. That is basic arithmetic. But men ignore it because the upgrade feels deserved. I understand that feeling. Success tempts a man to translate income into visible evidence. He wants to feel the progress. He wants his wife to feel it, his children to feel it, his friends to notice it, his younger self to finally believe the struggle meant something. So he converts increased earnings into increased lifestyle. He tells himself he is not being reckless. He is simply matching his standard of living to his new station. Then one day he discovers something brutal. He has not upgraded his life. He has upgraded his obligations. The second trap is financing comfort instead of buying flexibility. This is one of the most expensive mistakes a man can make because it feels so reasonable in the moment. By your late 30s, you are tired, you are busy, you do not want friction in every corner of life, you do not want the old car that keeps breaking down, you do not want the apartment that makes the family feel squeezed, you do not want the stress of saying no every time something extra comes up. So you choose convenience, comfort, relief again. That sounds harmless, but how you pay for comfort matters more than comfort itself. When a man finances a vehicle for 6 years, because the monthly payment looks manageable, he is not buying a car. He is buying 6 years of reduced flexibility when he stretches for the bigger house because the bank says he qualifies. He is not buying status. He is selling future options when he keeps adding monthly payments because each one seems tolerable on its own. He is constructing a life that demands constant performance. From him, flexibility is one of the rare financial assets that becomes more valuable exactly when life gets harder. If you have flexibility, you can survive a bad quarter. If you have flexibility, you can walk away from a job that is poisoning you. If you have flexibility, you can absorb an emergency without liquidating investments or reaching for debt. If you have flexibility, you can wait for the right opportunity instead of taking the first one that shows up because the bills are due. Most men do not realize how much they have sacrificed until they need it. Then the layoff comes, or the health issue, or the aging parent needs help, or the child needs something expensive and immediate. And suddenly the comfortable life they built reveals its true nature. It was never secure. It was merely smooth as long as nothing went wrong. The payment never gets tired. The note never becomes understanding. The obligation never says, "You have been carrying a lot lately. Take a few months and catch your breath." It simply comes again and again and again. The third trap is saying yes to commitments that permanently raise your brake. Even point, this trap is especially cruel because it often disguises itself as love, loyalty, or duty. A man cosigns for a relative because family helps family. A man absorbs debt that was not originally his because marriage means we carry things together. A man commits to tuition, lessons, camps, travel, a bigger home, or support arrangements because he wants to do right by the people he loves. I am not telling you those decisions are automatically wrong. Life is not a spreadsheet. People matter, family matters, duty matters, but duty without arithmetic becomes self-deception. Every obligation you add to your life increases the minimum amount of money your life requires. That minimum is not theoretical. It shapes every conversation, every risk, every career decision, every argument. Every night you lie awake at 2 a.m. staring at the ceiling. Men often focus on reducing small expenses because the small expenses are emotionally easy to discuss. They will cancel subscriptions and skip takeout and feel virtuous about it. Meanwhile, the real story is elsewhere. A mortgage is structural. Tuition is structural. A loan you cosign is structural. A car payment is structural. Support commitments are structural. These things are hard to reverse, hard to reduce, and nearly impossible to forget. Once they are layered together, the man who thought he was becoming more established discovers that he has become more fragile. The fourth trap is mistaking income growth for financial progress. High earners are especially vulnerable to this because a rising paycheck creates the illusion that the problem is already solved. It is not solved. Income is not wealth. Income is the stream coming in. Wealth is the asset base that remains after consumption, obligation, and impulse have taken their cut. A man can double his income and still make no real progress if his lifestyle expands with it. He can run a larger machine, produce more receipts, impress more people, and still remain just as exposed as he was before. This is why men earning very respectable incomes still feel tight every month. It is not because money does not matter. It is because income growth without retained capital is only a more expensive version of the same dependence. You are still trading time and pressure for cash. You are still one disruption away from fear. You are still vulnerable because the engine must keep running. The world flatters this arrangement because it looks like success from the outside. Larger house, better area, newer car, more polished life. But polish is not the same as strength. A polished, weak structure remains weak. Now let me explain why these traps become so dangerous between 35 and 45. First, income is usually higher in this decade than it has ever been. That sounds wonderful. And in one sense it is, but higher income also hides waste. When the money comes in faster, inefficiencies become harder to notice. You do not feel every leak because there is enough pressure in the line to keep things moving. Yet those leaks are real. Over 10 or 20 years, they become 6 figures, then more than 6 figures. Then the difference between optionality and dependence. Second, time pressure is intense in this period. Career demands peak. Children need things. Parents start aging. Health becomes less automatic. Your schedule fills up, reflection disappears. A busy man can continue making expensive structural decisions for years without ever pausing long enough to ask the only question that matters. Is this life actually becoming stronger or merely more complicated? Most men never ask it because they are too occupied managing the consequences of the previous. Yes, third, and this is the psychological trap underneath all the others. Responsibility gets confused with entrapment. Men start to believe that maturity means permanent heaviness. They assume that being a grown man means feeling squeezed, obligated, and unable to move. If they question the arrangement, they feel guilty, as if they are rejecting adulthood itself. That is nonsense. Responsibility means you can carry what you choose to carry. Entrapment means you no longer have room to choose. Those are not the same thing. Now let us talk about what these traps actually cost, because the cost is far greater than the visible monthly payment. The first cost is delayed compounding. This is where ordinary lifestyle decisions quietly become devastating. A dollar spent on locked-in lifestyle is not simply a dollar gone. It is a dollar that never got the chance to become an asset. It never entered the compounding machine. It never earned. It never had returns that produced their own returns. At 37, a man still possesses something extraordinarily valuable. Time with enough maturity to act intelligently. That combination can be worth a fortune if he uses it. But if he delays serious investing until 45 or 50 because the lifestyle machine consumed the surplus, then the most productive years of compounding pass by unused. The invisible cost is staggering. A few $100s a month invested for decades becomes real money. The same few $100s converted into extra payment obligations becomes memory. It leaves nothing behind but reduced flexibility. Most men never see a bill labeled lost compounding. That is why the danger is underestimated. There is no envelope in the mail telling you what 10 years of delay cost. But the cost is real all the same. It accumulates silently, and once those years are gone, they do not return. The second cost is chronic stress. This is the price men pay physically, mentally, and relationally when their break. Even point climbs too high. When the monthly baseline is enormous, even a good income does not feel like security. It feels like maintenance. You are not building. You are feeding the machine. Then every surprise becomes a threat. A medical bill is not just a medical bill. A slower bonus is not just a slower bonus. A car repair is not just a repair. Each one becomes evidence that the margin is too thin. That kind of pressure changes a man. It enters the house before he does. It affects his sleep. It shortens his temper. It makes him less patient with his children, less present with his wife, less clear in decision-making, less courageous at work. Many men think their problem is exhaustion. Sometimes the deeper problem is that they have designed a life with no financial breathing room. The third cost is the most painful because it strikes at identity. A man can look successful while feeling trapped. He has the symbols, he has the job, he has a respectable life, but he cannot move. He cannot take the interesting opportunity because it pays less at first. He cannot step away from the bad situation because too many people depend on the current income stream. He cannot even say no to work that is slowly draining him because the structure of his obligations remove the right to pause. This is the gap that breaks men quietly. The gap between what life looks like on paper and what it feels like in the body. Now, I am not interested in melodrama. I am interested in solutions that work in the real world. I am not going to tell you to set fire to your whole life, sell everything, and move into some fantasy version of simplicity. Most people do not need a collapse. They need a correction in direction. The first step is to audit your obligations, not just your spending. That distinction matters. Most financial advice stays at the level of monthly categories because categories are easy to discuss. Coffee, restaurants, entertainment, small leaks. I want you to go deeper. List everything you are obligated to pay whether you feel like it or not. Mortgage, taxes, insurance, vehicle payments, tuition, support obligations, recurring services. You have normalized debt minimums. Every fixed structure that remains due, regardless of mood, ambition, or fatigue. Add it up, that number is your real baseline, your real operating requirement, the amount your life demands before progress begins. Most men have never calculated it, honestly. They know the pieces, but they do not know the total. They prefer not to know because totals force confrontation. You need the confrontation once. The number is real, the next question becomes simple. Is this baseline buying strength? Or is it buying appearances and obligations? If the number is too high, you do not need shame, you need a plan. A cheaper car next time. A refusal to expand housing costs further, harder conversations about commitments. A more disciplined attitude toward any new obligation that pretends to be harmless. You cannot improve what you refuse to measure. The second step is to separate identity from lifestyle. This is where many men fail because money decisions are never only about money. They are about self-worth status, and the story a man tells himself about what kind of man he is. If a man believes the car proves he is successful, then downgrading feels like humiliation. If the neighborhood proves he is winning, then reducing housing ambition feels like failure. If the visible life is carrying his identity, then every financially wise reduction feels like personal shrinkage. That is a dangerous dependency. Your identity must be able to survive your lifestyle. In fact, I would say something stronger. A strong man is revealed by how little visible proof he needs. The man who can drive the modest car without feeling diminished is stronger than the man who needs a luxury badge to quiet his insecurity. The man who can live below his means without feeling embarrassed is stronger than the man who needs the house to certify his value. The market taught me long ago that people who need prices to affirm them make terrible decisions. The same is true in personal finance. Once spending becomes a way to stabilize identity, rational judgment disappears. Break that link and you recover power. The third step is to reclaim optionality one decision at a time. Optionality is a beautiful word because it captures the true purpose of money better than luxury ever could. Money properly handled buys room to think, room to refuse, room to wait, room to recover, room to choose. Every decision from this point forward either adds optionality or removes it. A larger payment removes it, debt reduction adds it, a new financed obligation removes it, a paid-off asset adds it, an unnecessary upgrade removes it, a larger cash buffer adds it. I am not asking you to change your life overnight. I am asking you to begin treating optionality as a sacred asset. If you do that consistently, the compounding works in your favor. First financially, then psychologically, you begin to feel less hunted. You begin to negotiate differently. You begin to see that freedom is not a fantasy reserved for the rich. It is often the direct result of refusing unnecessary fixed costs. Now let me address the honorable objection many men will make. I am supposed to provide. Yes, you are. I agree. But provide does not mean maximize visible lifestyle. Provide means create durability. Provide means build a family structure that can withstand shocks. Provide means reduce fragility. Provide means ensure that one setback does not put the house into a state of panic. Children do not need a father who is performing wealth. They need a father who is present, steady, and not spiritually crushed by obligation. A more expensive life is not automatically a better provided life. Sometimes it is the opposite. Sometimes the nicer house comes with more anxiety, more work dependence, less time, less patience, and a father who is physically there but mentally trapped. What your family needs most is not your ability to impress strangers. It is your ability to remain stable. That stability comes from margin when you break. Even point is low, everything changes. You negotiate harder because desperation is lower. You can leave the wrong opportunity because it no longer holds a financial gun to your head. You can think strategically because panic is not occupying the room. You can absorb surprises because you built space for them. That space compounds in ways most men underestimate. Calmer decisions create better outcomes create better positioning creates greater confidence attracts better opportunities. That is a virtuous cycle just as real as the destructive one. Let me give you the reality in plain numbers. A man who saves and invests a modest amount every month over 20 years can build something substantial. Not because the monthly figure is dramatic, but because time does the heavy lifting once the capital stays in motion. The opposite is also true. A man who redirects that same surplus into car payments, lifestyle upgrades, and obligations that produce no asset base is not merely spending money. He is surrendering future freedom. The difference decades later is not cosmetic. It is the difference between choices and dependence. It is the difference between entering your 60s with assets and entering them with memories of consumption. I have also watched men hit an early savings milestone and then immediately misunderstand what it means. They save the first meaningful amount, perhaps $50,000, perhaps $100,000 across various accounts. And instead of treating that as a foundation, they treat it as permission. Permission to relax, permission to upgrade, permission to reward themselves with larger fixed costs. That is backward. A foundation is not the point where you stop building carefully. It is the point where careful building finally becomes more powerful. You do not celebrate a financial base by burdening it with more obligation. You build on top of it. You protect it. You let it gather force. The men who build real wealth rarely behave as if a milestone is an excuse to loosen discipline. They understand that the early asset base is precious because once it starts compounding, each future dollar has partners already at work. This matters beyond retirement balances and account statements. Money is a tool. Its finest use is not display. Its finest use is to reduce fear and increase intelligent choice. When your finances are under control, you carry yourself differently. Not because you are rich, but because you are no longer cornered. You make decisions from strength instead of urgency. You become more useful to the people around you because you are less governed by hidden panic. That confidence is not arrogance, it is stability. And stability is one of the greatest gifts a man can give his family and himself. Here is the truth I want to leave you with. The traps that hit men between 35 and 45 are not failures of character in the usual sense. They are failures of visibility. Men walk into them because nobody names them clearly enough. Society wraps them in prestige and duty and congratulates the man as the bars close around him. Bigger house, nicer car, more obligations, higher income. From a distance, it all looks like winning. Up close, it often looks like a man who cannot stop running. Once you see the structure clearly, the spell breaks. You stop worshiping lifestyle. You start respecting margin. You stop confusing income with wealth. You start measuring what stays. You stop assuming that adulthood means permanent heaviness. You start building a life that can actually carry its own weight. And let me be direct. If you are in this window right now, you have not missed your chance, not even close. But delay matters. Every year, you keep raising the brake, even point. Every year you keep feeding the machine before feeding the asset base. Every year you keep postponing compounding because the lifestyle feels too established to question. You make the correction harder. So do not wait for a perfect season. Do not wait for work to calm down. Do not wait for the children to need less. Do not wait for some future version of yourself to become magically more disciplined. Act while the discomfort is fresh enough to be useful. Audit the obligations this week. Find the structural costs that should never have become normal. Refuse the next unnecessary upgrade. Choose the option that adds breathing room instead of the option that flatters your ego. Start transferring money toward assets before life invents. Another reason it cannot happen, because in the end, the real dividing line is not between men who make a lot and men who make a little. It is between men who build options and men who build cages. One group becomes freer as the years pass. The other becomes more decorated and more trapped. That is the test. When the next financial decision appears, and it will appear soon, do not ask whether you can technically afford it. Ask whether it lowers your break, even point, or raises it. Ask whether it builds an asset or an obligation. Ask whether it gives your family more stability or merely a shinier story. Ask whether it makes you freer or harder to move. If the answer is that it makes you less free, then no matter how respectable it looks, no matter how normal it seems, no matter how many other men are doing the same thing, it is a trap. And a trap does not become safe just because it is popular.